Hi everyone, welcome to Module 5, Green Climate Fund in the Philippines. In this module, we will look at the roles and responsibilities of the Department of Finance as the National Designated Authority, NDA of GCF for the country, and the significance of the GCF country program for the Philippines. We will also examine the project screening and evaluation tool used by the NDA to screen GCF project concept notes for the Philippines. Let's get started. The NDA facilitates GCF's operations within a specific country. As the designated point of contact between the country and the GCF, the NDA has specific roles and responsibilities defined by both the GCF and the respective country. GCF defines NDA as responsible for a range of essential functions, including country coordination and strategic oversight. The NDA provides broad strategic oversight of the GCF's activities in the country, ensuring that GCF projects align with national climate change priorities and development strategies. This involves coordinating with various government ministries, agencies, and stakeholders to identify and prioritize climate change mitigation and adaptation projects. GCF project proposal review and endorsement. The NDA is critical in the proposal review and endorsement process. They assess proposed projects' eligibility, feasibility, and potential impact, ensuring they align with national priorities and meet GCF standards and requirements. Country Programming Framework Development. The NDA works closely with the GCF to develop the Country Programming Framework, CPF. This strategic document outlines the country's climate change priorities and objectives for GCF funding. The CPF guides the selection and implementation of GCF projects in the country. Stakeholder engagement and communication. The NDA serves as the primary communication channel between the GCF and various stakeholders in the country, including government agencies, civil society organizations, and the private sector. It facilitates stakeholder engagement and ensures the GCF's activities are transparent and inclusive. GCF resource mobilization and access. The NDA plays a crucial role in mobilizing and accessing GCF resources for the country. They work with government agencies, private sector entities, and international organizations to identify and pursue funding opportunities through the GCF. GCF project implementation and monitoring. The NDA monitors and evaluates the implementation of GCF projects in the country, ensuring that they achieve their intended outcomes and contribute to national climate change goals. Knowledge sharing and capacity building. The NDA promotes knowledge sharing and capacity building among national stakeholders on climate change issues and GCF procedures. They facilitate training, workshops, and knowledge exchange initiatives to enhance understanding and expertise in GCF-related matters. The Department of Finance is the current NDA in the Philippines, and it serves as the main interface between the Philippine government and the GCF. Specifically, the Department of Finance is assigned to provide broad strategic oversight on GCF-related activities within the country and convene relevant public and private sector stakeholders to identify priority areas to be financed by the GCF. Similarly, the Department of Finance also communicates nominations of subnational, national, regional, public, or private entities that seek accreditation to the GCF under the Direct Access track. The Department of Finance is likewise tasked with issuing the no objection letter on funding proposals submitted to the GCF to ensure consistency with the national climate change plans and priorities. As the NDA, the Department of Finance provides leadership on the deployment of readiness and preparatory support funding in the country. GCF has a relatively complex and multi-step approval process that also requires consultation with external stakeholders such as national designated authorities, focal points, accredited entities, technical advisors, and its own secretariat until the final decision by GCF's board. Let's look at the project origination, evaluation, and approval processes. GCF operates on the principle of country ownership, aligning interventions with national policies, plans, and strategies. It rapidly builds a transformative project portfolio to address climate change, focusing on adaptation and mitigation. GCF funding decisions consider 6 investment criteria: impact potential, paradigm shift potential, sustainable development potential, responsiveness to recipient needs, promotion of country ownership, and efficiency and effectiveness of the projects. The no objection letter has already been covered under Module 3. We will now look at the nomination of a direct access entity for accreditation and the selection and evaluation of a delivery partner to implement the readiness and preparatory support program of the NDA. The nomination of a DAE for accreditation is when an NDA selects an organization for GCF accreditation, enabling it to manage GCF climate finance directly. The NDA evaluates the entity's capabilities and alignment with national climate goals before nominating it. The entity then undergoes GCF's thorough accreditation review, assessing its financial, fiduciary, and technical proficiencies. Successful accreditation grants the entity direct access to GCF funds, enhancing local engagement in climate project development and ensuring that funding effectively meets the country's specific needs. Accreditation involves a comprehensive review of the entity's financial, fiduciary, and technical capacities. If accredited, the entity gains direct access status and can engage with the GCF directly for funding. Entities with direct access status can be more active in shaping and implementing climate projects. This approach contributes to strengthened country ownership, increased responsiveness to local needs, and the efficient use of climate finance. The process starts with a self-assessment of the DAE candidate through GCF's online assessment tool. This online questionnaire helps organizations assess their total legal capacity to undertake activities funded by the GCF, institutional arrangements, including systems, policies, procedures, and guidelines, and their systematic implementation. The NDA then issues an online call for accreditation proposals based on the criteria set by the Climate Change Commission. The call for accreditation proposals shall be published on the official NDA website. Organizations shall submit their complete accreditation proposals online to the NDA for evaluation. All accreditation proposals will undergo a screening by the NDA Secretariat and Technical Services, which is tasked to review the correctness and completeness of the accreditation proposal, including its annexes. If the submission is complete, the NDA Secretariat and Technical Services shall provide the organization with a document number and receipt date. Otherwise, they shall inform the organization of any gaps or required enhancements. After passing the screening, the proposals will also go through a technical evaluation. The NDA Secretariat and Technical Services shall conduct due diligence on the DAE candidate and review and assess the accreditation proposal based on national plans and priorities if the proposal satisfies the review. The GCF Technical Working Group will then review the accreditation proposal. Affirmative endorsement in favor of the applicant organization's accreditation under the direct access modality shall be sufficient as a basis for issuing a nomination letter. The members of the Commission shall provide their decision to the NDA Secretariat and Technical Services. Through the National Focal Point, the NDA shall transmit a copy of the signed nomination letter to the applicant. Upon receipt of the signed nomination letter from the NDA, the accreditation applicant shall complete the request form to apply to join the GCF's online accreditation system. The process of appointing a delivery partner for the GCF's Readiness and Preparatory Support Program involves the NDA choosing a qualified institution to manage the program's activities. This program enhances a country's ability to utilize GCF funds for climate initiatives. A delivery partner, which can be an AE or another institution, must fulfill the GCF's financial management standards to be selected. Here is the process for the selection of a delivery partner. First, the NDA issues a call for expression of interest to be a delivery partner to develop the country's readiness proposal based on assessing needs, identifying specific capacity and technical gaps and challenges, or other barriers to climate finance access and deployment. The call shall contain the specific readiness area, selection criteria, and application period aligned with the GCF Secretariat review calendar. Second, organizations shall submit their complete documentation and requirements to the NDA for evaluation. The submission shall be an electronic copy. Next, NDA shall consolidate and evaluate the submissions based on the defined criteria. Then, the NDA shall review the readiness proposals and the financial management capacity assessment, if applicable, within 10 working days from the receipt of the summary report. The NDA shall select a delivery partner based on the following criteria: competence, capacity, experience, and professional business and project management of the delivery partner based on the requirements presented in the call for expression of interest. Strong partnership with and focus on national implementing institutions. Cooperation with national, local, or regional partners. And track record of no effectiveness and efficiency in fund management. After we have learned the procedures related to GCF in the Philippines, let's now look at the planning document for GCF in the Philippines through the GCF Country Program. GCF Country Program is a strategic planning document that outlines a country's priorities and projects for accessing financial support from the GCF. It was developed to seek funding from GCF for adaptation and mitigation initiatives to achieve climate resilience and green growth. The document aligns with GCF's focus on country ownership, sustainable development, gender responsiveness, and environmental and social safeguards. The country program integrates various national policies and plans for climate change, environmental management, and socio-economic development to support national climate goals in line with the Paris Agreement. The development of the program involved broad stakeholder engagement, including government, civil society, academia, development partners, and the business community. The document is updated periodically to reflect the latest national priorities and needs. For more details, please refer to the DOF website for the latest GCF Country Program document. In the Philippines Country Program, all the programs and projects can be grouped into 9 thematic areas. 1. Enabling the overall environment for green finance and climate investments. 2. Development and promotion of climate-resilient frameworks, practices, and business systems in the agriculture and fisheries sectors. 3. Promotion of sustainable energy and transport. 4. Integration of resource and energy-efficient designs and systems in domestic, commercial, and industrial use. 5. Promotion of green, sustainable, and livable cities. 6. Development of climate-resilient ecosystems. 7. Promotion of climate-responsive social protection programs. 8. Provision of climate information services. 9. Integration and active involvement of indigenous peoples in the Cabinet Cluster on Climate Change Adaptation, Mitigation, and Disaster Risk Reduction Initiatives. Under the thematic area of enabling the overall environment for green finance and climate investments, a comprehensive approach is needed to mobilize and redirect the flow of funds toward low-carbon, climate-resilient infrastructure needed to implement the country's NDC and address regulatory and market barriers preventing green investments. Programs, activities, and projects under this thematic area are expected to support the development of the overall environment and the creation of the domestic capital market for financing climate businesses through targeted interventions to address institutional and market barriers to green investments. The agriculture and fisheries sectors play a key role in the country's aspiration to reduce poverty and achieve a food-secure Philippines amidst the negative impacts of climate change. This sector is historically vulnerable to changing weather patterns. An almost non-stop onslaught of climate-related hazards, notably tropical storms and the El Niño Southern Oscillation, has repeatedly crippled food production in the country. Projects under this thematic area are expected to enable local communities to manage climate risks while pursuing their sustainable livelihoods, improve climate-resilient agricultural practices, provide climate investment programs for agriculture and fisheries, promote enterprise and value chain development, particularly in producing food staples for domestic consumption, capacitate local communities and fisherfolk on sustainable agriculture and fisheries. The project activities continue with the following: build systems and services to increase the resilience of vulnerable farmers to a range of severe projected climate change impacts. Provide a user-responsive agrometeorological system with agriculture and climate information and advisory systems for climate-resilient agriculture. Mainstream climate-resilient agriculture in relevant agriculture programs by strengthening local-level capacity to formulate and implement relevant land use and planning laws, policies, and programs, and deliver targeted climate information services. Encourage the private sector to provide financial and business support to vulnerable communities in adopting climate-resilient agriculture. Provide market access for smallholder farmers and increase their capacity to develop business enterprises. Promoting sustainable energy and transport is a key strategy for achieving a low-carbon economy, as indicated in the national and sectoral frameworks. The energy and transport sectors offer the biggest potential for reducing GHG emissions due to the continued dependence of these sectors on fossil fuels. Projects categorized under this thematic area will support the development and/or strengthening of frameworks, policies, and regulations to 1. Increase investment focus and utilization of sustainable energy and transport systems and technologies, including related infrastructure. 2. Build capacity and support of the public and private sectors to manage and implement sustainable energy and transport systems. 3. Provide a sustainable supply of electricity and reduce GHG emissions from power generation by promoting investments in the development of renewable energy-based mini or microgrids to accelerate the transition from coal and other fossil fuels. 4. Further drive decarbonization of the transport sector by significantly increasing the viability and uptake of sustainable road transport technologies and systems. 5. Promote a low-carbon future for maritime and freight transport through energy efficiency improvements, processes, and technologies, and address the emissions from maritime-related transport and port activities in selected coastal areas. The Philippines is integrating resource and energy-efficient designs into domestic, commercial, and industrial processes to mitigate climate change, with adaptation benefits depending on the sector and location. Key strategies include 1. Developing and strengthening policies to promote low-cost, energy-efficient housing and renewable energy use, and increasing investments in energy efficiency, waste management, and water services. 2. Building capacity and providing technical support to national and local government agencies and the private sector. 3. Implementing and monitoring programs to incorporate energy-efficient designs in various sectors. 4. Providing financial assistance and catalyzing private sector investments in green urban infrastructure, including building retrofits, energy-efficient fixtures, pollution control systems, solid waste management, and wastewater treatment facilities. Under the promotion of green, sustainable, and livable cities. Projects and programs will aim to facilitate equitable job creation, reduce poverty, and reduce the vulnerability of settlements to flooding and health risks that may be attributed to poor housing, poor sanitation, and poor social services amidst increasing meteorological hazards like typhoons and flooding. Examples of projects under this thematic area involve risk assessment and mapping, retrofitting, climate-resilient public building construction, urban forests, and green spaces in cities and urbanized areas, including socialized housing and cross-cutting projects. Under the development of a climate-resilient ecosystem, projects in this area aim to enhance community resilience by implementing climate-adapted agroforestry and effective watershed management to increase carbon sequestration, water availability, watershed resilience, rainwater harvesting, and forest fire control measures. Initiatives will include the development of biodiversity corridors, climate risk assessments for forest and coastal hazards, ecosystem services payments, mangrove rehabilitation for climate action and biodiversity, and the creation of green infrastructure to bolster small island and coastal defenses. Efforts will also focus on establishing marine protected areas, improving coastal zone management, formulating policies to protect habitats, and enhancing land use planning based on climate risk assessments for upland and coastal regions. For the promotion of climate-responsive social protection programs, this include enhancing public services delivery through local mainstreaming of Cabinet Cluster on climate change adaptation, mitigation, and disaster risk reduction programs and policies, provision of a local government support fund to advance climate resilience, development of capital assets of climate-vulnerable communities. For the provision of climate information services, The focus is to ensure decision makers and their advisors utilize weather and climate information to make informed adaptation decisions. Climate information services extend beyond mere observations and forecasts, encompassing the generation and distribution of data to support climate-resilient development across various sectors. This includes emission scenarios, climate model predictions, assessments of local impacts and vulnerabilities, adaptation strategies, and best practices. Effective adaptation relies on understanding expected climatic changes, making accessible and practical climate information essential for adaptive management and decision-making. Although treated as a distinct concept, climate information is fundamentally interlinked with other major themes, as it underpins the need for accurate weather and climate data in all project proposals to address the gaps in climate information services critical for decision-making. Indigenous peoples are pivotal in the Philippines' climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction efforts, leveraging their deep-rooted traditional knowledge of the climate and natural resources from their ancestral lands. Their historical adaptation strategies offer essential insights for addressing new climate change challenges. This initiative will focus on protecting Indigenous peoples' land rights and promoting sustainable resource use, enhancing ecosystem resilience and ensuring food and water security through traditional and sustainable practices, facilitating access to renewable energy and appropriate technologies, reinforcing Indigenous knowledge and practices to combat climate change effects, improving Indigenous peoples' health and well-being, and fostering platforms for sharing Indigenous peoples' education and traditional knowledge in harmony with modern scientific approaches. We have now understand the focus of the GCF Philippines Country Program. How do NDA and GCF evaluate concept notes and funding proposals? GCF will use the screening and evaluation tool to evaluate once it is submitted. To streamline the review process, NDA will review and endorse concept notes and funding proposals and send them to the following agencies for comments and corresponding review. The Climate Change Commission shall ensure that the proponent's program project has an established climate change rationale that will be used to determine priority actions that need to be addressed and provided climate change adaptation measures. In parallel, the National Economic and Development Authority shall ensure that the proponent's program project is aligned with the Philippine Development Plan 2023 to 2028, specifically Chapter 15, Accelerate Climate Action and Strengthen Disaster Resilience. The NDA shall also seek the review of national government agencies that are executing entities or implementing partners. If these agencies endorse the concept note or funding proposal to the NDA, then it will become the basis for the issuance of the no objection letter, and the process will continue to GCF. This concludes Module 5, Green Climate Fund in the Philippines. When you are ready, please go to the quiz section to complete this module.